Tonight, we're going to look up at the sky. But we're not just looking at stars, we're looking for a lost story. A message that's been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years, written right there in the heavens themselves.
You know, ever since people first looked up, we've been connecting the dots. The Big Dipper, Orion's Belt, we all know those shapes, right? We've told stories about them, used them to find our way. It's just this universal thing we all do.
But here's a wild thought. What if those pictures aren't random? What if they're actually chapters in one single epic story? Like a divine message that was put there in the cosmos right from the very beginning. A message that, for the most part, we've totally forgotten.
So to start digging into this, we've got to start with this idea that maybe, just maybe, the stars were made for something more than just light and finding your way home.
Okay, so if you look right at the very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, it says the lights in the sky have 4 purposes. We get seasons, days, and years. That makes sense. But what about that first one? It says they're for signs. The original language there really suggests they're meant to signify something, to actually communicate.
And this just drives that point home. The Psalms talk about this too, saying the heavens are literally telling and declaring things. It's not just, pretty scenery. It's an active declaration. The idea is that there's actual knowledge being poured out night after night.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract concept. The Bible actually names names. In the book of Job, which is one of the oldest books we have, God himself talks about the bear, Orion, and the Pleiades. He even mentions the fleeing serpent, which is a pretty clear reference to the constellation we call Draco.
So here's the kicker. This message, it wasn't meant for just one group of people. The Apostle Paul actually quotes that same psalm we just looked at, and he argues that this voice from the heavens has gone out to everyone, to the ends of the world. It's like a universal broadcast, beamed out for all to see.
Okay, so how does this all tie together? Well, this is where we get to the core idea, how this universal message is seen as the original telling of the gospel story.
Now, this is a really big claim, but it's absolutely central to this whole idea. The thinking is that for the first 2,000 years of human history, before any scripture was ever written down, this was the only Bible the world had. A picture Bible, right there in the sky.
When we hear zodiac today, our minds immediately go to horoscopes, right? But this perspective sees it as something totally different. Not just 12 random signs, but 12 chapters in a single epic story that repeats every year in the sky. A complete story from beginning to end.
So, what is the story? Well, researchers like Francis Rolting dug into the most ancient constellation traditions from all over the world, and they found this incredible common thread. It's a story about a divine person, born of a woman, who fights a serpent, gets hurt in the process, but in the end, he wins. Does that ring a bell?
And this was no simple storybook. It was unbelievably detailed. See, each of the 12 main signs also had 3 smaller accompanying constellations called deacons. So altogether, you have 48 constellations that weave this incredibly complex prophetic tapestry. Every single piece had a role to play.
Okay, but if this message was so clear and everyone could see it, what happened? I mean, why don't we see it this way today? Well, that's where the story takes a turn.
What happened is, over time, this incredible story got twisted. The focus shifted. People stopped looking at the message and started looking at the messengers, the stars themselves.
And this is the absolute key distinction right here. The original message, it was God's revelation, a story about him, where the stars were just signs pointing to that story. The corrupted version, that became astrology, a system where the stars themselves became causes that could control your life. It completely flipped things, from worshiping the Creator to, worshiping the creation.
This way of looking at it totally reframes the whole relationship between Christianity and ancient myths. You know all those similarities you hear about? Dying and rising gods, virgin births? Well, from this perspective, that's not proof that Christianity copied paganism. It's the other way around. It suggests those pagan myths are actually just distorted echoes of a much older, much purer truth, the one that was first told in the stars.
All right, so this is a fascinating story, right? But so what? Why does any of this matter to you and me today?
I mean, what's the real takeaway here? What changes if you start seeing the heavens not as just random stars, but as a deliberate message? How does looking through this ancient lens change anything?
Well, according to the source material, it actually does a few really important things. For one, it shows just how deep God's plan might be, suggesting he's been reaching out to all of humanity, right from the very beginning. It also gives you a totally new way to look at the zodiac, a tool to talk about what it might have originally meant. And for some folks, it's even seen as a confirmation of a young Earth, because the belief is these constellations were named about 6,000 years ago.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful idea, that this ancient story, the one that started with a promise, well, maybe it isn't over. Maybe the signs are still up there, marking time, pointing toward a final chapter. It definitely makes you look up at the night sky a little differently, doesn't it? Not just with wonder, but with a whole new set of questions.